All right, everybody, welcome to class. Today is this is in a webinar format, so your camera will not be active during the presentation. If you can hear me, though, you are in the right place. You only have to attend now to receive your credit. Your time here will be, it's all being tracked by Trek, and they will issue your credit. Give them about a week or so before you complain that I haven't done it yet because I have no control over Trek. We will get started here in just a few minutes. If you have any questions, especially about our services or booking a class or an inspection, please don't hesitate to reach out. We service the Austin, Houston, San Antonio, and all the surrounding areas. And I will put the regional director's info right now. I will type this right in here real quick. His name is Lucas Sanders. Especially if you have any problems, he will take care of you. 512-825-4084. And his email address, lucas@tlcinspectors.com. There we go. All right. So to schedule, to view a schedule or sign up for any other CE courses, because we have a bunch of them, you can follow, and let me see if I can get this link in here, because that seems to be the only thing that transfers. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome to Stucco 101. And just a heads up, we will be recording this, so it'll be available if you want to watch it later. Go ahead and leave me your email address in the chat and I will get it to you. This class is going to be good for 2 credits towards your license, which is really cool, right? Again, it takes Trek about a week or so to get your credits accounted for and all that stuff. So there's nothing I can do to expedite the process. I will submit the attendance as soon as we wrap up this course, and then Trek takes it from there. You're also going to receive an email with an option to leave some feedback regarding today's class. All feedback and input is welcome. We're always trying to improve our curriculum and our experience. So if you choose not to say anything, that's okay. That's cool too. You still get credit and all that kind of stuff, but we appreciate some feedbacks because we can't get better without your input. Who the heck am I? I'm just John. John Bolton is my name, and I will be the instructor for the entire day, or at least the next couple hours. I started doing inspections back in 1998, and besides a degree in building construction, I've accumulated a few certifications and licenses along the way. I'm also a national speaker on inspection-related things and have published articles and have even written 2 books. I've done over 12,000 various inspections throughout my career and have helped train inspectors all over the country. I say this stuff not to brag or impress anybody, just to let you know where I'm coming from and maybe earn a little bit of your trust. All right. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, feel free to post them in the chat. It's kind of hard sometimes to monitor the chat and talk with my hands and all that kind of stuff, so I'll do the best that I can. I will also stay here at the end of class and answer questions to the best of my ability. All right, so real quick here, we have some other fantastic classes coming up. Anybody can join, anybody in the state. They're always free, and you always get CEs, so like, what's there not to love? Here's a few of the things coming up: basics of heating systems and what you need to know about mold. So there's some really cool stuff coming up. Now that link you see there at the bottom, that's the one that I posted in the chat, or at least hope I did. That leads to it's a continuing education portal. Then if you're interested in attending any other classes, follow that link, follow the bouncing ball, and you can sign up for whatever you like. Nothing too tough. Again, if you enjoyed today's class and this is beneficial, we hope that you will tell your friends. Also, if any of you are interested in, maybe having any of our courses presented for you privately for your office or for your team or something like that, we would love to do that for you. Just get a hold of us, and Lucas's contact is in there, and he'll get everything set up. All right, so before we get rolling today, this class is sponsored by TLC Home Inspections. TLC is a local multi-inspector firm servicing the Austin, San Antonio, Houston, and all those surrounding areas. Here's what you get when you choose TLC as your home inspection partner. We have done over 6,000 inspections, or we do over 6,000 inspections a year. So we come from a whole bunch of experience. We know you guys work 7 days a week, so we are available 7 days a week as well. We include warranties with every full inspection that is protection beyond the inspection. We are also excited to provide you and your clients with access to HomeBinder, which is really neat stuff. For the client, HomeBinder is like a single, simple, and secure online platform for all of their home maintenance needs. Clients can store their home's documents, including the home inspection, the warranty stuff, any repairs, renovations, all that kind of thing in the HomeBinder, and receive maintenance reminders, appliance recall notifications, all kinds of cool stuff. HomeBinder also offers a free concierge service that clients can use to set up their utilities and stuff like that associated with moving. The companies included there are vetted so that they are specific for each market. Now, clients do not have to use the HomeBinder. It's just a completely, totally free, complimentary service that TLC makes available for clients and agents. And speaking of you as the agent, HomeBinder brands every message and reminder sent to the client with your information, right? It keeps you at the top of their mind through repetition. So HomeBinder also provides a repair pricer for all the deficiencies found in the report. Those are all researched again to specific geographies, whatever city you're in. So everything is very accurate. Now, this repair pricer only goes to you. Okay, so you can use it if you want. If you don't have to, but it costs you nothing to do that and makes you look like a rock star. We typically deliver our inspection reports within 2 hours of the inspection, as long as the technology gods are on our side. We have over 1,400 five-star reviews online, so we take our client services very, very serious, and we back every inspection with a 200% guarantee. What that means is if you are not completely satisfied with the inspection, not only are we going to refund all your money, but we're also going to pay for and send out an inspector of your choice to redo the inspection. So this takes away any risk of, giving us a shot. Here's a few things that separate us from the competition. We do a free thermal imaging scan on every full inspection we perform. That gives us the ability to help identify things like missing insulation, roof leaks, shower leaks, toilet leaks, overheated breakers, leaky ductwork, all kinds of stuff like that. Most of our packages include foundation elevation readings with the inspection. So we help take the guesswork out of foundation assessment. So it gives your client some actual data regarding the performance of the foundation. With most of our packages, irrigation systems are also included, up to 12 zones. We do in-house termite inspections. We offer swimming pool inspections, septic inspections, and depending on what market you're in, we offer mold and indoor air quality assessments. We can take air and/or surface samples depending on the situation, and sewer scopes. And the more sewer scopes you see, the more you realize everybody needs a sewer scope, regardless of whether you're even selling your house or not. You'd be shocked at what we find inside pipes. And last, but certainly not least, we are excited to announce that we are now offering the option for your clients to pay at close. Right? And it costs them nothing else. No extra fees involved. This will allow your clients to get all the options they want, like, if they want to add mold, radon testing, sewer scoping, those kind of things that they might, otherwise accept the risk of, not getting the inspection, now they can go ahead and tag that on and they don't even feel it. All right, let's get into the good stuff. Here are today's objectives. What we're going to cover is, what is stucco? We're going to go over the different types of stucco out there, some of the pros and cons of stucco siding. We're going to talk about all the layers that are installed in a stucco system. We're going to go over the inspection process, as well as a little bit of an overview on what's done on an invasive stucco inspection. We're going to discuss things to monitor, to keep an eye out on, to watch. So any kind of red flags that you encounter with stucco, as well as we're going to talk about some maintenance tips, how to keep that stucco performing for a long time. So let's get into it. Let's start with, what is stucco, right? Stucco, that's when you sit on gummo. Okay, if nobody laughs and helps me out, I will just entertain myself all day today. So give me a thumbs up, a little laughing emoji if you find this humorous. You'll humor me. Stucco siding is a type of hand-troweled masonry plaster consisting of cement, water, lime, and sand. It comes in a variety of textures and finishes. If it's installed properly, stucco provides a very long, a very good, durable protection against elements for 50 plus years, right? There are two common stucco types that we're going to encounter, that being hard coat and synthetic. So the first is going to be your traditional, or what they call hard coat stucco. It's a mix of, like I said, cement, sand, lime, and water. This creates a hard rock-like finish with really cool and interesting textures. It's applied in 1 to 3 lifts or 1 to 3 coats, depending on what kind of system they're using. They have either metal or plastic flashings, and that helps drain water away and provide crack controls and that kind of thing. So typically, it's applied over an exterior wall sheathing, something like OSB or plywood. And this here is a really cool diagram to kind of show you how it's built. And we're going to discuss all of these in greater detail later throughout the presentation. All right, so as you can see here, you've got your wall framing, okay, or wall sheathing, if you will. It's typically OSB or plywood. You've got a waterproof building paper, or what they refer to as a WRB, water resistant barrier, WRB. Then you have your metal lath, then your scratch coat, your base coat, your brown coat or finish coat. And then, of course, we see the drip screed or weep screed. We're going to discuss all of these things a little bit later, but that is a nice little graphic showing you the basic here. Now, and these are some examples of different textures. Pretty cool stuff. You can pretty much get whatever you like, and they keep coming out with new things all the time. The next type that you might encounter is synthetic stucco, or EIFS. EIFS is exterior insulated finishing system. Okay, it's a multi-layered exterior finish using an acrylic resin that it's resistant to water damage. It's not as common as hard coat stucco but you might see it, occasionally. EIFS has been used, like they used it a lot in Europe before it came over here. Like back in the 40s after World War II is when they started using this stuff. What I heard was after the war, this was a good repair practice for damaged buildings from the war. So most repairs to a lot of these European buildings were to Those structures were old stone, very large stone, brick, or something durable like that. So this was a very practical type of repair. Um, EIFS is primarily used on commercial buildings in the United States, and they've been doing that since like the 80s, right? That's when it was introduced into the residential market. If anyone remembers back in the 80s and 90s when there were massive failures with these systems, like water got in but couldn't get out, and houses experienced like severe damages and mold. If you go to the Google and do a search for 80s, 90s EIFS houses, you will find some really cool pictures like this. Look at that stuff. Thank you, Ian, for the laughing emoji. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, no kidding. Yikes. That's some scary stuff. But it looked fine on the outside. Water gets in and bad things happen. So here we go. Let's discuss some of the pros and cons. Some of the pros, stucco is appealing for a number of reasons. Mostly, they provide very good, it provides very good fire resistance, right? A 1-inch coating of stucco provides about a 1 hour firewall rating, right? So if you have units that are very close to each other, or condos, townhouses, that type of thing, that makes a very good firewall. Then the aesthetics, right? You can even add soft shades and deep earth tones by adding dye right into the mix, which is pretty cool. And that you can even avoid having to paint the house when you do that. It does come with some downsides though. Because it's brittle, stucco siding will crack. All right. If the foundation settles, if water gets in, anything like that, that can cause stresses the stucco, it can crack. So it isn't maybe the best choice when you have areas with high clay content, places like that, that are notorious for swelling and retracting and causing foundations to shift. I understand you do have some areas on the east side of Austin where that's like a really high clay content area. What happens with clay is that expansion and contraction, right? When you go through heavy rains and you go through long droughts, you'll get that expansion and contraction type of thing. So over time, even stucco on houses with other type of good firm foundations, they'll still develop hairline cracks. And always remember, the better you caulk, seal, and paint, the better the house is going to perform. Period. When water gets in, bad things happen. Finally, stucco doesn't really have a great insulation factor. A 1-inch layer of stucco might have something like a 0.2 R value, which isn't much. If you're in a cold climate, that might not be your best choice, right? But to better understand how stucco works, let's do a deeper dive into the various layers. So constructing a wood frame stucco wall, it's a multi-layer process, right? We're going to discuss these layers and how they come together to help create a water-resistant barrier system. Once we get through the various layers, I do have a short video that will provide you with some insight into the installation process, which, it's another way of learning. It's another presentation type and helps the whole process sink in. So it all starts with the substrate, right? You've got to have a wall to apply this stuff to. This is a typical Texas home right here. And besides structural value, the sheathing provides the surface that all of these layers of stucco are going to be installed on. Sheathing can be wood, cement, chipboard, fiberglass, could be, other different stuff. But in Texas, especially in new construction, this is typically what you're going to see, right? Obviously, when you're building something with OSB or plywood, that type of wood can also be very absorbent, which is why it is so important that all of the layers are done properly. Okay, especially this next one. This is the water resistant barrier, the WRB. Now, WRBs are used as part of the exterior wall system, okay? They're designed to prevent air and water from getting in, all the wood stuff that gets damaged, but also allows water and vapor to get out, right? It helps keep the structure dry. And then, of course, you don't have the mold thing and the wood rot thing and the termite thing and all that kind of stuff. Because of all the water related problems and lawsuits and that kind of stuff, and to try to minimize problems, you'll see builders have started integrating some improved moisture management solutions. Like woo woo, right? There are a lot of products and processes on the market now, including synthetic underlayments, rain screen systems, sealants, self-adhered flashing membranes. A cool thing is that choices are expanding because of new technology. Building codes are evolving, which demands different methodologies. And then, of course, you always have the growing concern with mold issues. Each of these moisture management type products has its place, of course, depending on the local environment and the details specific with that project. So if you're building a house and considering stucco, it's always worth consulting a professional as to what moisture management system to install for your particular environment. The next layer is the metal lath. This, think of this as like rebar for stucco, if you will. I think that's a great analogy. There is a wide range of different systems that are used in the lathing process of stucco these days. So I wanted to discuss some of the different types available and what application they are typically used for. Certain types of wire are better suited for different things, and knowing which type of lath to go with, your particular stucco is going to be like an essential part of the installation process. So we're going to discuss a few of those now. The first one is going to be the 17 gauge wire, and this is typically known as 3-coat stucco wire. All right. The wire sticks off of the wall just a little bit. That's called furring, like an animal has fur, furring. So that way the stucco, the mix when it's applied, keys in underneath and behind the lath. Okay, those are terms that you're going to hear, and of course you can use them to dazzle your clients with. You really want to make sure the wire ends up in the middle of the base coat of stucco that's going to go on here. Okay, so remember, think of it as like rebar. You want it to be in the middle so it provides support and adhesion. The two different pictures here, it shows the same gauge wire being used, but the picture on the left is using wire that uses a square pattern, and then the one on the right uses the more common honeycomb type pattern. I mean, both are going to work fine, and both are acceptable for 3-coat systems. It's really it depends on the experience, what the installer is used to using. The wire is obviously going to be galvanized, right? You don't want it to corrode. And remember, never forget, when water gets in, bad things happen. Here, the stucco is way too thin, and you can actually visually see the lath corroding. Okay, that metal lath is getting wet. As it gets wet, it corrodes. As it corrodes, it expands. And since Stucco is basically a concrete product. It's very strong in compression, but very weak in tensile strength, and it will just bust apart, right? So here, this was chronic water absorption, which literally caused the lath to disintegrate. You can even see the black. This is old school, where they're using the old felt paper, but you can actually even see that felt paper underneath. Matter of fact, check this out. This is me crushing the stucco with my fingers. That's how thin the stucco is. So if it's not installed right, you can't expect it to perform right. Next, we have 20 gauge wire, otherwise known as one coat stucco wire. This wire is the same as the 17 gauge, but it's a little bit thinner, a little bit flimsier. It's typically used in one coat stucco applications and has smaller openings than a 17 gauge wire, and it's not nearly as strong as you might expect. This is really the only type of wire that's used for a one coat stucco installation, but the wire is made for it. The one coat wire also has smaller spacing between the holes. It's about a 1 inch compared to like an 1.5 inches that you typically see on the 3-coat stucco wire. So we have two pictures here showing that one coat stucco wire. The one on the right I thought was really beneficial to show you because it's what they call preferred. It's like preferred. Remember the term furring out? It's preferred. You can see those little bent pieces, right? That holds the lath out. So like when you're applying the stucco mix, it gets all in and around and behind and holds the wire in the middle, right? If it's not preferred, they do make nails that will fur the metal out, right? But most installers go with this kind of a process because it's so much easier and quicker. All right. The next one we're going to discuss is high rib lath. High rib lath. This type of lath is intended for ceilings and soffits. Okay. The design is made to hold the plaster in place while minimizing the number of fallouts. Fallouts are just small amounts of concrete that fall out during the application and they taste awful. It resembles an expanded metal lath, but it's going to be a little more rigid because of the grooves that run down the length of the wire. The picture on the right shows those ridges in detail, and this is how it's installed on the ceiling with the points facing up. Here we have normal expanded metal lath, right? This particular lath has a much smaller pattern. It allows the cement to bond to it really, really well. Okay. It can also be used for patches, when you have damaged areas, for transitions or uneven surfaces, things like that. I've been told that you guys rarely see this type of lath, but in Florida, where I'm from, this is all that we see. Nobody uses anything else. Then we have a fiberglass wire, which is typically referred to as mesh. Okay, because just what it looks like, right? And this is another alternative to metal and has furring strips along the back of it. This is code compliant and can be used instead of metal lath. This kind of stuff, it's obviously going to be easier to cut. It hardly weighs anything, so it makes it a lot more user-friendly. This product is really difficult to get, though, so I'm told, and it's going to be more expensive, which is probably why you don't see a whole lot of it. In this picture here, you see it used with a stone veneer product, AMSV, if you're familiar with that. Adhered masonry stone veneer. It's just apparently more difficult to get and more expensive, like I said. The good thing about it is you can take the stuff and cut it with scissors, utility knife or something like that. It's attached the same way as traditional metal lathe, so you can staple it or you can nail it. Now, this is one that I used to get questions about all the time, and that's architectural foam accents. So again, it's another layer, right? Is the strength difference between the different gauges worth the cost difference, or is it negligible? The answer is always it depends, right? 2,000 square foot house will cost a lot less than a 7,000 square foot house. So what I think one of the biggest factors is the crew that's using it. If they're used to using one certain type, like here in Florida, I showed you, all we use is that small diamond. And if you tried to get them to use something different, it would probably cost you more because they're not as familiar with it. All right, now this is, oh yeah, the foam trim. Okay, stucco foam can be used to change the whole architectural look of the home. Uh, but the cool thing is it doesn't require any kind of structural modifications, right? It can change your home from looking something average to looking something like extraordinary with, creating really cool trims and accents where maybe there weren't any before. So we will see, since this is fairly inexpensive and easy to do, we'll have a lot of investors that will, add some curb appeal using these kind of accents. This product will also work well if you need to provide, if you, especially when you need to upgrade the house. Sometimes some neighborhoods just demand it, right? This is relatively speaking, cheap and easy way to do it, right? If you're just doing traditional stucco, it can look a bit flat and not real attractive. That's why you'll see these foam accents being used so much in Texas. Foam is affordable. It's much less expensive than adding like architectural features with wood or metal or something like that. Some manufacturers claim that their stucco foam is even more durable than wood, but there have been some issues regarding the product's durability and strength. And here's a couple examples. Right now, stucco foam is generally not as sturdy as wood or metal, right? So it's obviously going to be more prone and easier to damage. Like, if you hit it with a lawnmower or a weed eater or a branch falls on it or something like that. Now it's going to feel nice and hard, like to the touch, right? Because you're putting a real thin concrete product on top of foam. But as far as impact goes, it's obviously not going to be as resistant as wood or metal. Now, most foam is the way they make it hardier, if you will, is with the fiberglass meshing. So that's going to be between the foam and that top layer of stucco. If you have dents and cracks and stuff like that, like you see here, well, they're pretty easily repaired. So it's not a huge deal. All right, the next layer is referred to as what we call a scratch coat. It's the first layer of cementitious stucco. Okay. Scratch coat is part of the base coat and the very first one that's going to go on the wall. It's applied with a hawk and a trowel and a scarifier. The cement itself is spread evenly among the surface, and it's usually about 3/8 of an inch thick. After that cement goes on the wall, then they use a scarifier which is it looks like a really cool back scratcher, right? They'll use that to make those horizontal lines in the stucco so that the next coat, which is going to be your brown coat, so the next coat has something to cling to. So you can see that picture right there, perfect. It's showing you exactly what's happening. They're scratching it, creating those horizontal grooves, so the next one will stick. After you've allowed that to cure, and typically that scratch coat is only going to take about a week or so, depending on the product. You're ready to do what they refer to as a brown coat. We start with a scratch coat, now we go to the brown coat. This coat is applied after using the same techniques that were used on the scratch coat. However, instead of using a scarifier, they're using something called a derby. Okay, a derby is like a 3-foot long trowel. Basically, it's got two handles because it's so big, and that guy there on the left you can see him handling it. The derby pushes the cement around to make sure that the brown coat goes on nice and even and uniform over the wall. This coat, like the scratch coat, is going to be about 3/8 of an inch thick. Now, the big difference here is that brown coat is going to take a bit more time to cure. All right. The scratch coat was maybe a week or so. This is going to be more like a month. All right. You can see in the picture here, these guys are applying that brown coat. And this is kind of what I meant by those accents tending to add a little more of an aesthetic value instead of something like a completely flat wall system here going around the window there. Next, we have the finish coat. And this is the final step, right? This whole process, the finish coat or top coat, whatever you want to call it. This can be applied with a hawk and trowel, and can be customized with a number of different ways using different techniques. So it's again really up to your local professionals that are applying this. There's two main types of material used in stucco finishes. Remember, we talked about the synthetic and the hard coat. The hard coat being your traditional basic stucco that everybody's used to. They both have advantages and disadvantages and offer a lot of different types of finishes. Here, there you go. We have a few, and that's just a few different examples of some stucco textures that that you can get. Really, it's up to you, your contractor, what kind of look that you're looking for. Some textures work better to achieve, say, an overall look and feel. Excuse me. Like a smooth texture. If you're looking for that Mediterranean look or sand kind of a finish for a more modern look. It really depends on, what you want. This, anyway, gives you a good idea of what kind of textures, excuse me, that can be applied on that top coat. And this is how they all come together. This is kind of a recap here. This little diagram is a great visual aid in illustrating the multiple layers that we've been talking about. So first, we have our wall framing. And ladies, what do we call those? Studs. That's right. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate you. Next, we have our sheathing. And ladies, what do we call that? Sheathing. It's just sheathing. That's all. This one here is plywood or OSB. And that's typically what we're going to see in Texas. Then you have your WRB, remember the water resistant barrier. Again, there's several different type of products out there. So this graphic here is referring to old felt paper. So it's a bit outdated, not illegal or anything like that, but a little outdated. Most things now are more, synthetic products. Then we have our lath, our scratch coat, our brown coat, and finish coat. So this picture gives you a really good representation on how this whole thing comes together. Now what I want to do is share this quick video with everybody. It's the installation process, right? Now, while I don't expect many of us on this call today to have a future in stucco installation, I did think it was beneficial because, you know, when you see things in action, when you do things, you participate, it helps you remember, and you look like a rock star out in the field. So it's about 7 minutes, all right, but it is a really cool aid. You know, being able to see this whole application process firsthand. All right. Thank you very much. Now, you know, I tried this last night and it worked. And here it doesn't want to work. Oh, there we go.
Stucco wall. For centuries, stucco has proven to be one of the most enduring, versatile, and weather-resistant exterior wall finishes available. And with its variety of colors and textures, stucco continues to be one of the most popular wall systems. Stucco can be applied over standard wood frame walls in a 3-coat process and over masonry and poured concrete walls in a 2-coat application. Before starting your project, check local building codes for wall assembly and moisture barrier requirements in your area. Weather-resistant stucco walls require the use of 2 layers of grade D waterproof building paper over the wall sheathing, including plywood, OSB, exterior gypsum board, and concrete board before the application of the base coat stucco. When attaching the waterproof building paper, vertical seams should be overlapped by 6 inches or more, and horizontal seams should be overlapped by 4 inches in shingle fashion. The building paper should also extend 16 inches around all corners. Once the water-resistant building paper is in place, all trim accessories should be installed. Trim accessories can be cut to size using metal snips. Cut edges are often very sharp, so always wear gloves when working with these materials. A weep screed is a typical accessory required by code. Weep screeds are installed along the bottom edges to allow any water that has entered the wall to escape. Casing beads should be installed to neatly terminate stucco at the end of a wall. Casing beads also act as a guide to help maintain a consistent stucco thickness. Casing beads for a 3-coat system should be 3/4 of an inch thick. Casing beads for use in a 2-coat system over masonry or concrete should be 1/2 inch thick. Then, galvanized expanded metal lath or 1-inch woven wire stucco netting is installed over the entire surface, overlapping by 1 inch on the horizontal seams and 2 inches on the vertical seams. Galvanized nails or staples should be used every 6 inches, both vertically and horizontally. Make sure that the nails or staples penetrate the studs a minimum of 1 inch. The lath or stucco netting should also extend 16 inches around all corners. If the base coat stucco is applied to a clean, unpainted concrete or masonry surface, waterproof building paper and metal lath are not required. Then, control joints should be placed to create wall panels no larger than 144 square feet, keeping the panels as square as possible. Stucco will shrink as it hardens and cures. Control joints help reduce the potential for shrinkage cracking. Expansion joints are required anywhere there are existing wall expansion joints and at inside corners and changes in substrate. Expansion joints are designed to allow for the expansion and contraction of the stucco wall panels with changes in temperature. Corner trim should be used on all outside edges to protect the exposed stucco and to provide clean, finished lines. Now that the substrate is properly prepared, it is ready for the base coat stucco application. Quikrete base coat stucco and Quikrete base coat stucco with water stop are recommended for use in a traditional 3-coat system over wood sheathing and as the base for a 2-coat application over masonry or concrete. These pre-blended stuccos are extremely workable for hand-applied stucco applications and have the high bond strength required for a successful project. Mix the base coat stucco to a workable consistency. The proper consistency is achieved when the stucco will hang on a trowel held at a 90-degree angle. Stucco that is mixed too wet will sag. Stucco that is mixed too dry will not adhere properly to the metal lap. One bag of 80-pound base coat stucco will cover about 27 square feet at 3/8 of an inch thick. Using a square trowel held at a 45-degree angle, apply the base coat stucco using firm trowel pressure to force the stucco into the lap. Work from the bottom of the wall up and apply at a thickness of about 3/8 of an inch over the entire area. Then, using a straight edge or darby, screed the stucco to a uniform depth of 3/8 of an inch thick. Once the stucco has become thumbprint hard, scratch horizontal grooves 1/8 of an inch deep into the base coat across the entire area with a raking tool. This is why this step is commonly referred to as the scratch coat. Allow the scratch coat to cure for 24 to 48 hours. Keep the surface of the stucco damp with a fine water mist. This step will help reduce shrinkage cracking, especially in hot, dry conditions. Now, mix and apply another 3/8 inch layer of base coat stucco directly to the scratch coat. This step is called the brown coat. Using a straight border darby, screed the brown coat surface to a true, even 3/8 inch thickness. Fill any surface voids with additional base coat. The total combined base coat depth should be 3/4 of an inch thick. As soon as the stucco has lost its sheen, float the surface uniformly. Then cure the base coat with a fine water mist for 24 to 48 hours. For two-coat applications over masonry block walls and poured concrete walls, the scratch coat step is eliminated from the process. Simply dampen the wall, apply the brown coat, then screed and float the surface to uniform 3/8 inch thickness. Now that the base coat is complete, Quikrete finish coat stucco can be used to provide numerous decorative color and texture options for your stucco wall. Finish coat stucco is available in both white and gray formulations and can be combined with more than 20 standard Quikrete stucco and mortar colors. Popular textures such as heavy lace, light lace, dash, sand float, and smooth finishes are easy to achieve with a little practice. Working from the bottom of the wall to the top, apply a consistent 1/8 inch thick coating of finish coat stucco. Then use a whisk brush to lightly dash finish coat stucco onto the wall, and then use a trowel to knock down and flatten the stucco. If you prefer a heavier texture, first spread the finish coat stucco in a thin application to achieve good color coverage, and then double back with a heavier, uneven application. Once the heavy coat begins to harden, knock the finish down with the trowel, creating a heavy lace finish. If a smooth finish is your preference, simply use a trowel or sponge float in a circular motion. It is important to complete the entire wall in one application. This will help limit any color inconsistencies from batch to batch. Then keep the surface damp for several days by applying a fine water mist.
Okay. That was pretty cool. At least I think so. And we are moving actually pretty quick here. So we'll all get out early today. All righty. I thought that was pretty cool just to see, the whole process in action. It's kind of like being there without having to sweat. Next, we're going to run through some of the flashing details. But first, what I am told to do is we have to take a quick break. So you can use the bathroom, refill your drink, whatever you got to do. We will pick back up here in just about 10 minutes. All right. Now that we have looked at the various layers of stucco and the installation process, let's talk about some of the common flashings. All right. Flashing details are critical for diverting water away from and out of the structure. Here are some pieces commonly used in exterior stucco cladding. All right, the first one's going to be something you're going to hear inspectors call out all the time, called a weep screed. Weep as in like you're crying, weep screed. What is a weep screed and how is it used? A weep screed is it's a type of flashing that runs along the bottom of the wall Number one, it helps hold stucco up, okay, because stucco is using the word loosely, fluid, pun intended. Holds the stucco up and it helps wick incidental moisture out of the holes in the bottom of that flashing. So any incidental water that gets into the wall assembly or past the stucco, it has a way out. All right. Where's that at here? Okay. So you can see it here in that picture. It runs just below the sill or the base of that stud wall, right? The sill plate is that base piece of framing the studs are mounted onto, right? So it's going to terminate about an inch or so below that sill plate. Any water that does indeed weep out of the holes in the bottom then will terminate below the vulnerable framing. I always like to mention during an inspection that water follows all paths and all paths in gravity. Okay, and gravity is pretty predictable. So the majority of water will flow down and out the weep holes. You'll even see this on brick and stone. Okay, if you notice those small holes that are drilled at the base of a brick wall, same type of process. It's for the same thing. If water gets behind there, it has a place for it to get out. All right, let's look at this a little bit more detailed. It's cool. So the weep screed is actually installed directly to the sheathing and below that sill, right? And then you'll see that felt paper or whatever WRB, water resistant barrier you're using is installed on top of it in a shingle fashion, okay? Lath is then added, and then we can see our 3 coats of stucco, like that graphic right there. So you can see if water gets through the stucco, it hits that WRB, travels down the wall, exits the holes in the bottom. Pretty simple process, right? It is important to note the clearance, though. There's a 4-inch clearance requirement from the ground, right? You don't ever want to see stucco terminating below ground, right? That would only encourage moisture intrusion, moisture wicking, and it provides a hidden travel plane for termites. The photo on the right here shows you what that finished weep screed looks like if you were laying on the ground looking up, right? You can see those holes and see how it terminates on the foundation wall below the sill, about an inch or so below the sill, so water that gets in there is able to come out. Next, we're going to talk about kick-out flashing, and who hasn't heard about kick-out flashing at this point, right? I think everybody has heard inspectors call this out before. Now, this could end up on an inspection report in 2 different areas, all right? It could be on the wall, exterior wall section, or most of the time it's on the roof, but it could be on either, right? Either way, you see it's associated with the roof system and the wall system, so it's really relevant to both, right? Kick-out flashing is a type of diverter flashing. It's a special type of flashing that diverts rainwater away from the siding and into the gutter or just away, off of the wall. So when it's installed properly, they provide great protection against the penetration of water into the building. Kick-out flashing, it should be installed in all these areas wherever the roof terminates against a wall. Okay. And FYI, this has always been a requirement. Okay. It has never been code to funnel water into a wall assembly, which is exactly what sidewall flashing does without a kickout. Right. So the picture on the left does a really great job of showing you where it's needed. So if a roof is terminating against the wall, you should have that kickout down at the bottom, right? If you ever see those dark stains streaming down the side of a wall, right where that roof terminates, that's a real good indication you don't have a proper kickout. All right. Speaking of those dark stains, I have a picture here, which is pretty cool if you don't have a kickout. This is an image I took of new construction while it was being built. Like you see no windows, like no duh, right? But it depicts exactly what I'm saying. Water is not being diverted off of the roof. Water runs down, and this is actually, there had been no rain. This is actually just the condensation that forms or the dew that formed overnight. This was in the morning. I saw the pattern. I go, well, that's just a really great illustration. So without a kick out, that's where the water goes. All right. Now I'm going to show you some images here, some examples of damage that might happen when you don't have proper kickout. When the water is not being properly diverted, it can get into the wall assembly and then bad things happen, right? Many times this goes on and it's not even discovered until there's some more significant damage because the water intrusion is concealed. You can't see it, right? Now the cost to remedy is going to be very expensive. And if there's structural damage, well, then that requires technically an engineer or a design professional. They have to design the repair to today's standards, not yesteryear's. So something similar to this happened to one of my neighbors. This was several years ago. The house was built in, it doesn't matter. But when the repairs were being made were many, many years after it was originally constructed. So code requirements had changed and everything was different. So there were these big time structural upgrades that weren't required when they built it. That's what I mean by is today's standards, not yesteryear's. So installing properly and maintaining are critical things to do with any house, really. Now we're going to talk about one of the most important pieces of flashing. That is the roof to sidewall. Okay, just like the picture you see here, that's a combination of both what they call step flashing, okay, because they're little pieces shaped like an L, and counter flashing. That's the part that extends down over the vertical part of the step flashing. Here they're used together, and that creates a really good water resistant barrier, right? So you can see that really needs to be done before they apply the stucco even, right? The flashing is installed before the stucco to make sure it seals properly where the roof meets the wall. This flashing is typically made of usually galvanized steel, sometimes aluminum, occasionally copper, right? If you've got the money of a rich, successful real estate agent, then you might use copper. This is an example of flashing installed on the face of the exterior wall. Now, it can be before the stucco application, or it can be over stucco, say on something, that'd be more typically like when you build an addition or something like that. Sometimes if it's face applied and sealed, sometimes it's what they call regleted, R-E-G-L-E-T, reglet. This is a good example of reglet flashing. See how it's cut into the chimney? All right. I'm sure everybody here has heard about some of the negative reputations that stucco has developed over the last decade. It makes you ask the question, is that reputation really deserved? And that's what I'll go over next. But if you didn't know what a reglet was and you're ever on Jeopardy and Alex Trebek asks you, now you know what a reglet is. But let's look at some of the bad rep that stucco gets. Is it really a bad product? And I would say the simple answer is just no. But let's dive a little deeper into the subject, and you'll see for yourself the positive and the negative things that Stucco has to offer. Um, many people are finding themselves Many people are finding themselves in a position of having to pay a large amount of money to remediate stucco homes, right? This means having the stucco removed, taking it off of the structure, and having the underlying damage repaired. Sometimes it involves structural replacement, remediation for fungal growth, that kind of thing. It's not uncommon, of course, to find rotted sheathing and those kind of things underneath, because when it's not installed properly, you can't expect it to perform properly. And when it can't dry out, it stays wet and gets damaged, right? You can imagine that some of these kind of repairs that get extensive would be financially very stressful for homeowners. So, rule number one is the better you caulk, seal, and paint, the better the house performs, period. And rule number two, all cracks leak. The University of Central Florida Constructability Lab did a study in Florida, Central Florida, shortly after those 3 hurricanes hit in, what was it, 04? Stucco can be repaired. Anything can be repaired. It's what we call a two-step process: a phone call and a check. But anyway, UCF did these studies in Central Florida, and these were done by PhDs, engineers, this kind of thing, and where they're using actual ASTM standards, where racks are mounted, they follow a scientific process, pressures, quantities, all that stuff is measured, and so forth. So it's a legit study. And they discovered that cracks as small as 1/64th of an inch would allow moisture penetration and accumulation of water at the base of the wall. 1/64th of an inch. Like, that's really, really small. It's like 2 pieces of paper. It's very, very thin. So, like I said, the better you caulk, seal, and paint, the better the house is going to perform during winds, especially, or during rain, especially when wind is involved, because wind only accelerates the penetration. All right, so what is the other problem? Well, it's poor construction that causes the problems. Oh no, it's the studs. Okay, so we know that stucco is porous. Water will wick into and through stucco and cracks. So the water must be managed properly, right? Any water that does migrate through the stucco could get through the house wrap and damage the studs. And that would be tragic, right? Okay, I'm laughing on my end. Thank you. Thank you again, Ian. Appreciate you, brother. So does this mean that all stucco homes are doomed? No, not at all. Stucco is a very versatile, it's a beautiful product. It provides many, many, many years of protection for the home if it has been installed properly, right? Proper construction methods and properly maintained. I am glad, thank you. I am glad to hear your excitement. Stucco really is a really good product. It lasts a really, really long time. Like I said in the beginning, I think 50+ years is life expectancy, right? As long as it's installed and maintained. But it's all about making sure that it is installed and maintained. So here are a few of the common problems found in stucco. Simply put, the reason stucco gets a bad rap is a poor install and poor maintenance. right? You know, that could have been, looking at this picture right here, that actually could have been one of the houses I worked on as a kid. Like I'll never forget one day, me and this guy Buddy, we were working and Buddy knocked over this bucket of wet stucco all over me. Like it totally screwed up the whole day, and like it looked like crap. And at the at the later at the end of the day, the foreman comes around and he's asking me what the heck, in more colorful words, what the heck happened? The house looks like crap. And I just told him the truth. Buddy kicked the bucket and I got plastered. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll be here all day. On this house, the water was not managed, and you can see the underlying structure, the underlying wood structure was not properly protected. But I will tell you that there's no such thing as a perfect install too, all right? Most systems are not installed with the proper thicknesses, cure time in between, critical flashing details. You know, now you just saw something like the missing kickout flashing that we looked at, right? You saw some of the repercussions we can have by not doing that right. Breaches in the envelope allow water penetration, and then sustained moisture levels of 19% or more, they start to cause fungal growth. Like studs, right, ladies? They call it studs to break down and deteriorate. So every issue I have that I just highlighted are all related to the installation and maintenance, right? Not to the product itself, but how it's installed and how it's maintained. The job is really only as good as the stud applying it and the stud maintaining it. All right, now let's debunk some myths about stucco, because there are a lot of myths regarding stucco siding. The first one is buying a house with exterior stucco is just asking for trouble. The biggest difference between stucco that poses a hazard and stucco that adds value and beauty to your home is whether it's installed and maintained. How many times do I have to say this, right? Claiming that buying a home with stucco is just asking for problems, it simply isn't true. Stucco, the other myth is stucco is difficult to maintain. To answer this, we got to kind of discuss proper maintenance practices, right? Stucco should be regularly checked for cracks, and or the root cause of cracking should be figured out quickly, right? Once the cause is determined, then you can figure out the repair, and it needs to be done right away. Cracking could indicate a problem with the foundation or settlement of the house, right? It could be simply shrinkage. And no, I won't have a funny slide inserted here. Homeowners sometimes attempt to fix cracks or cracking problems with an impermeable paint, all right? It's important to keep in mind that stucco should always be painted with permeable paint. Permeable means that it allows water vapor to escape. Escapes through the pores of the stucco rather than trapping it inside. Putting on an impermeable paint is like putting a garbage bag on the house. Another part of stucco maintenance is just regular inspection. Like it's not something that you move into the house and never do anything, right? This will give you regular inspections will give you the opportunity to spot issues before they become overwhelming, especially financially, right? A professional will know exactly what to look for when checking for defects, allowing you to zero in on problem areas and have them repaired proactively, which like nobody does. It's like any system in your house, it's always beneficial to be proactive versus reactive. And unfortunately, that's what most of us are, is we don't do anything until we see the problem, and then it's late and it costs more, right? So small cracks are common. You're gonna have small cracks. That stuff happens. It's when you get those cracks that are larger or out of plane or even rotational. Okay, that's when it could be a possible indication of something more serious like the foundation, right? So simply repairing cracks isn't necessarily going to fix the problem. It may only kick the can down the road if you have something major going on. So if you're having a problem with your foundation where it's getting excessive movement, it's most likely going to affect multiple systems throughout the home. In other words, you shouldn't just see a few stucco cracks and think your foundation's failing. All right. You will typically see other corroborating evidences of foundational movement. Number three, excuse me, stucco doesn't, some people think it doesn't have a very high aesthetic value. Now, this again is another myth based on either an inferior installation or something that maybe just obsolete patterns, right? The last one, all stucco homes pose the same problems. Since we know that a professional installation is the key to a great stucco exterior, let's ask then, what's the difference between a professional install and a subpar installation? And it's really simple. The key is the labor that performs the work. And with most systems in your home, finding a qualified professional, somebody familiar with the local building codes, the manufacturer's installation instructions, the conditions, environmental conditions, it makes all of the difference in the world. No matter what material you're choosing for siding, it must be maintained. All right. So that really is really what helps retain its quality and not allowing the water throughout years and years and years of use. Often, I think when a negative stigma is associated with stucco, it's commonly found more with the synthetic stuff. Remember, it's called EIFS. So let's discuss some of those problems, right? You don't see it too often in residential construction, but when you do, you want to look like a rock star. EIFS is, again, synthetic stucco exterior insulated finishing systems. It historically has had a bad reputation, and I think a lot of that stems from our experiences from the 80s and 90s. And if you're like me that grew up through that, you're very familiar with it. If you're younger and you didn't go through that, or you're too young for all that, it may be a different paradigm. But incorrectly installed EIFS over a wood frame house, whether it's wood frame, gyp board or something like that, you're typically going to have that's when you have the rot problems. Stucco or structural issues come with those when it's chronic, when it's long-term, stuff like that. And then, of course, you get fungal growth and termites as well. So why does it have this bad reputation? If it's installed incorrectly, it's not maintained correctly, it allows the water in and everything I just mentioned there, right? So then you're probably thinking, how do I know if the home is that you're looking at is EIFS, right? How do you identify EIFS? Well, there's a few different methods you can use, and I will show you. The first one is going to be the touch test, all right? And that's probably like the easiest thing to do. It's actually touching the material with your bare hand, right? When you touch the wall, if it's hard coat stucco, it's going to feel like concrete. If it's EIFS, it's going to feel more like a hard foam, and because that's basically what it is. That's exactly what it is. So that's the easy way. If you touch it and it feels like hard foam, well, that's EIFS, right? This is also a really common way of testing it. It's called the knock test, all right? You can knock gently on the wall like you're knocking on a door, all right? If it sounds hollow, right, and you'll know the difference. You can hear it totally different. If it sounds hollow, that's EIFS, all right? Real stucco is like solid, feels like Stone Mountain. Okay, solid concrete, because that's what it is, solid concrete. There is still another way, is you can look at penetrations. So I'm talking light fixtures, receptacles, that kind of thing. So if you can remove an outside light fixture, maybe an intercom cover, or a receptacle cover, something like that, so you can look inside. If it's EIFS, you'll be able to see that styrofoam, right? You see that styrofoam board, bam, you know you've got EIFS, period, right? This, because you won't have that on a traditional hard coat stucco, right? Typically, though, I can always identify it just with the touch, the knock test. That's going to be very, very easy to do. So you don't have to carry around screwdrivers and that kind of thing. That's the easiest way to do it. Touch it, feel it. Now for the stucco inspection process, here's a few steps for that. First, we start with a visual. All right, a visual inspection of the exterior to look at, determine the condition. Do we see any installation compliance issues with current standards, dictated standards, those kind of things. Now, first of all, an inspector will walk around the house and look for easy telltale signs, mostly stains, things like efflorescence, cracks, flashings that aren't installed or installed improperly, any stucco that might go below grade. Remember, going below grade, that's old school. That's really, really old school. You won't see that stuff anymore. Remember, we talked about that 4-inch clearance you should have. Next one's going to be a visual inspection of the interior. Okay. I'm looking for that interior manifestation of an exterior source. Does that make sense? I'm looking for evidences of moisture intrusion. So if I'm inspecting the interior of the home and I'm seeing evidences of water penetration through the wall system, that's going to be a huge red flag for me, right? Especially if you have no plumbing in that area. Okay, if you're looking at a wall around a window, that's going to tell me pretty quick the window maybe it's not flashed properly. Maybe the moisture barrier wasn't installed or installed properly, or we have an installation with the stucco, an improper installation with the stucco there. Next step is going to be infrared. Okay, using an infrared scan, looking for evidences of potential water intrusion that I can't see with my eyeballs, right? And that's why thermal imaging, that's why we do it with every inspection. It is an absolutely invaluable tool. Some things may look fine to your eyeballs. You cannot see anything, but the camera can, all right? We find things that other people without infrared absolutely cannot find, period. If you're not familiar with infrared, infrared basically, air quotes, sees temperature, okay? So something that's wet is a different color than the dry thing that it's around, like this picture here. So we can use our cameras to scan over the walls and ceilings and see if any evidence of moisture penetrating the wall, things like that. If you look at this image, on the left is what your eyes see, what on the right is what the camera sees. You can see the dark stain here and it goes vertical. When you look out the window, this was a chimney. All right. This had a kick-out flashing issue. Water was getting in. So from the outside, there's nothing there. From the inside, well, you can see it right here in the picture. There was nothing there. Without the camera, we could not have found that. There's no way. So with the camera, we find it, we fix it before it turns into structural issues, and you're calling engineers, you're calling mold remediators, you're calling the termite guys, all that kind of stuff. Another one is surface moisture testing in areas that are suspect. Okay, once we see that image on the camera, it looks like some possible moisture intrusion. Then we go over with the moisture meter. The moisture meter has some of them you scan like it's non-penetrating, so you can scan things like shower enclosures with tile. Others have pins where you can poke it, and there's nothing in between the pins but that material, because I can go over a nail, a screw, metal hardware, something like that in the scan mode and get a false positive. So there's a little bit of skill in using moisture meters like this. But those help us and confirm moisture content, whereas the camera will find the anomaly, the moisture meter confirms moisture content. We could go on and on, but we've only got so much time, right? Now, invasive stucco inspections, those are only completed by a qualified professional, all right? This involves drilling or poking holes into the interior wall cavity in order to take moisture measurements inside the wall cavity, okay? A moisture meter here is used to detect that moisture penetration, and these are what he's using there. You've got some really long probes, these deep probes. So you drill the hole, stick the probes down in there deep. The typical moisture meter will have tiny little pins that are about a 1/4 inch or so long. You couldn't use that on the stucco. And if there's metal lath, the surface use of the moisture meter may give you a false positive because of that metal in there. So sometimes you have to drill the holes, use the probes, and establish something, be able to tell that, yes, there is an elevated moisture content inside the walls. Now, the EDI, which is the Exterior Design Institute, that's a really reputable third-party certification for home inspectors. You can check them out at exteriordesigninstitute.org. All right. So if you ever need somebody to do something like that, a more invasive inspection, that's a great place to go. And they have a list, find an inspector type of button. A common question I get asked when I'm in the field is how much damage is done during one of these. Now, that will all depend on basically what the investigation reveals, but I wanted to show you all a couple of images here just to show you what it looks like. So this is a great example of the size of the holes that are typically drilled into the wall. They're not huge, right? They're relatively small when done by somebody that knows what they're doing, all right? And once you patch them properly, you hardly even see them, like that picture on the right. Now, there are other aspects, things like if we don't have any of the exterior paint, that same paint, that will stick out a little bit more. If it's old paint and you're using new paint to patch it, well, that'll stick out a little bit more. But either way, you look at it, they're not big holes anyway. And again, this is only, you're not doing this on a typical home inspection. This is typically when you think like there's a major issue and you have to dig a little bit further. In other words, I didn't want you to think, oh my God, we have to call this engineer. It's going to be thousands and thousands of dollars and we're going to cut big holes. Not necessarily, not on the initial investigation. It's just this, right? So let's go over and look at some of those red flags that might come up during a home inspection that would lead you to consider having something more invasive. There are many visual indications when there is a potential problem with stucco siding. Okay, we're going to review these one by one with some pictures, visual aids, so you can be a little better equipped to identify these problems, make you a little bit more rock star that you already are. That way, when you're with a client, they have some concerns, you now have you can now help them like an inspector, right? Help them identify some of these major issues. Again, look like a rock star. All right, the first one, cracks. Cracks are very, very common. While a single hairline type of crack may not be a bad sign. Numerous cracks could be an indication of a bigger problem, but not always, okay? Especially those really thin hairline cracks, those are typically associated with shrinkage. Remember though, when you have multiple cracks, these represent movement regardless of the type of crack. So in other words, if you add up each crack, that determines how much. This isn't making a lot of sense, is it? Okay, for simple math, if you had 8 1/8 inch cracks, 8 1/8 inch cracks, that's the same as a 1 inch crack. That makes better sense. Okay. So if you have large cracks, something like that on the left, now that looks like an indication of a structural issue. All right, that does not look like shrinkage. That picture on the left, those are huge. That looks like an earthquake hit that wall, right? That is definitely an indication of a bigger problem. The picture on the left, what that looks like to me is the foundation, okay? The foundation, what holds the wall up, has actually moved down, right? The thing holding the wall up has moved down. That would definitely require further investigation because as inspectors, as human beings, we can't see what the foundation looks like, what's going on underneath the soil. The crack on the right, the right picture, that definitely looks like a water intrusion problem though, right? Where does the water go? It goes in the hole. That does, well, number one, that doesn't look like a proper window installation. It looks like water got in. That looks like a window designed for masonry, and that's in a wood frame wall. It doesn't look like it was the right way to begin with. But again, we don't know what kind of concealed damages might exist, or if any damages exist, right? But I can tell you one spot my interior inspection is going to be focused on will be right inside this window. Guarantee you that. I have found a consumer-friendly product. Actually, Sherwin-Williams has several crack repair products that you can, if you don't have a Sherwin-Williams store by you, you can always, do the Amazon thing. But if you expect it's foundation related, many inspectors can do those foundation elevation measurements, and that can offer some insight on how the house, the foundation is performing, right? All right, next we have stains. As unsightly as stucco stains may be, avoid the temptation to paint over them, all right? Number one, the paint may not stick. And what you might be doing is masking a hidden condition that just goes on longer and causes more damage. So just like cracks, you need to know what's going on. You should always address the underlying problem first before painting over the top of any of them. Now, some stains are obvious and all you have to do is clean them, right? You know that brownish arch created by the sprinklers? Well, that's an easy one, right? No need to panic there. If you're seeing fungal growth, well, that when I see something like that, that's indicating to me a chronic moisture condition, right? And maybe it's you need diversionary tactics like gutters or some other type of diversion. Sometimes it's what do you call those canopy type things they put over windows, something like that. Anything to divert water away from the area. If it stays, if it's wet chronically, you're going to have growth. You're going to have damages. Here we have moss. We call stucco moss. All right. It's not unusual for moss to grow when it's chronically wet, especially when you have shady areas. So if you have like the side of the house, if you're in an area where the houses are really close to each other, it doesn't get sunlight. If it's on the north side of the home, you obviously have a much lower drying potential. The sun doesn't get out and cause the water to evaporate. It stays wet longer periods of time, and then you have this fungus among us, right? Moss, you can scrub that stuff away, right? Using those, what do you call those? Not steel wool, but anyway, you can scrub the moss away, scrape it away, and then use something like water, borax, bleach, soap, something like that to get it clean. Really just depends on the situation. There's a lot of, you go to Amazon, there's a whole bunch of cleaning solutions out there. You go to your local hardware store and ask for help. So if it's something where it's a pretty major issue and you have a lot of discoloration and there's a lot of different cleaning products that can help you get rid of those. However, it is essential to address the moisture problem that's creating the condition conducive for the moss to grow. So if it's gutters, you need to add gutters. That's very, very common, right? Gutters are worth the money. You want to get that water, any of that moisture diverted away from the structure. If you're having that excess moisture and it's so much moisture to a point it's causing moss, that condition can be even detrimental to the foundation. So diversion techniques and water management techniques, you've got to employ those kind of things and make sure your grading and your drainage slopes away from the house. The water is diverted away from the house. It's very critical for multiple reasons. In areas where you've got moss growing on the stucco, you may want to consider even trimming back your shrubbery, any kind of trees and that kind of stuff that inhibit the drying potential. Sometimes it's you add rocks, mulch, something that will expose the wall, allow the sun to hit it, allow water evaporation, that kind of thing. So some of these things you can absolutely handle yourself, no problem. But anything you can do that manages moisture, prevents moisture from migrating into the building assembly is obviously the way to go. Next one we're going to discuss is crumbling stucco. Okay, crumbling stucco could be due to age, could be due to some type of mechanical stress, could be pest infestation, could be settling. Oftentimes it's water getting in. Sometimes it's mechanical vibrations. A lot of times it is impact. Okay, lawn equipment and stuff like that. But as more and more stucco crumbles away, well, then the water penetration is just simply accelerated, right? It's time for an inspection when this kind of condition exists. You need to know that to help identify the root cause of the problems and provide remediation recommendations sooner than later, right? That way, the less like you are to continue to allow the moisture and allow the problems. And because the longer you wait, it doesn't get any less expensive. It only gets more expensive. Ooh, this one. Oh, now if you see this, you know you got a problem right away. All right. By the time you notice this condition, it's probably telling you there's some significant water damage inside. Unfortunately, water damage can require some extensive structural repairs, and sometimes you have those corroborate, or what do they call that? The friendly fire, collateral damages. That's when you start getting the fungus among us, the mold, termites, wood rot, structural issues, things like that. So once you start to see this, it's a major red flag. This would be a condition where I'd recommend at that point having an invasive inspection, because now they're going to need to get inside the wall system, try to gauge how bad the damage is, inside, behind the stucco, inside the wall. But either way, that stucco's coming off. That's not going to be a repair job. That's going to be a do-over job. Is there any danger to pressure washing? Certainly. If you've got cracks and gaps, where does the water go? It goes in the hole. And when you apply pressure behind it, it goes even further, right? Did you know that the typical, the theoretical moisture rise in concrete is like 6 miles? Seriously, in wood frame, it's like 400 feet or something like that. They're huge. They're very, very big numbers. So as long as the source is there and the source doesn't go away, water continues to travel. And if you choose to pressure wash something, well, and then you just force it in there harder. Now, there's nothing wrong with pressure washing the house. Well, actually, you have to pressure wash the house if you're going to paint it, right? You have to get it clean. But as a, like a routine every weekend type of thing, no. But I think that makes sense, right? Okay. Another really big red flag, excuse me, is that water penetration. Now, water damage to interior walls and ceilings is always found through a pathway, right? So that's a crack or a penetration like a window, door, a vent, flashings, things of that nature. They could all be potential indications of an issue with your exterior cladding system. And this doesn't just go for stucco, okay? This, whether it's fiber cement, hardy type, brick, stone, wood, whatever else you're using. The type of damage in this picture is very concerning, especially since there's no plumbing in this area, okay? And something you got to think about, especially when you're looking at this picture, like, has this condition impacted air quality? Maybe it could have. So further investigation and even possible lab testing, i.e., mold test, may be recommended. Now, looking at this picture, this could also be an issue with a roof. All right. Sometimes water damage can manifest in one place but source from another. Okay, gravity is pretty predictable and maintenance free. It comes in, it comes down, it goes, it wicks, it goes from point A to point B. So if you do have a leak coming from the roof, there's a chance that it's traveling down a truss, down a wall, and then terminating where it hits like the header in this picture here, and that's what's causing all the damage. So the next step is we have to identify where the moisture is sourcing from. Correct the condition first, correct the source, and then we can repair the damage. If you have mold growth, then simply cutting, scraping, hammering, that kind of action could actually cause a cross-contamination, and you're just spreading spores in the rest of the house. So when you're doing something like that, containment is critical before doing any repairs. That's why if any of you guys have ever seen a professional mold remediation, that's why they have the visqueen walls, floor to ceiling. They have to contain the area so you don't cross-contaminate. All right, now that we have highlighted some of the warning signs of potential issues, let's talk about maintenance tips that we can do to prevent some of these things and maximize the lifespan of our stucco. I think this is probably the 5th time I've said it, but I got to say it again. The better you caulk, seal, and paint, the better the house performs. Pretty simple stuff, right? Here's a few tips I recommend for stucco maintenance. First one's going to be regular cleaning, okay? So just keeping it clean is simple. Just like any exterior product, stucco can get dirty very easily. A simple spray your garden hose or a pressure washer on occasion usually does the trick to maintain it, right? There's also lots of other cleaning products on the market. Help yourself to Amazon. They can help you find anything. Next is going to be sealing it when needed, okay? on exceptionally poor paint conditions, sealant may be a good idea. Okay, get the house properly cleaned, then sealed, then paint. All right. I also recommend you have to make sure that all penetrations are properly sealed around windows, doors, light fixtures, penetrations, gas lines entering the home, receptacles, electrical panels, anything that's penetrating that exterior envelope, make sure it stays nice and sealed. If you're using 99-cent caulk that's rated for the interior, all you're going to gain with that is exercise. All right. You're asking a product to be exposed to UV, get hot, get wet, get cold, get dry every single day. You have to choose the right product. So saving a few dollars on a tube of caulk is futile. You have to use the right products, and the right products are often a little bit more expensive. I used to get asked all the time, can I just seal over the top, or do I need to remove old sealants that are there? And the answer is always, it depends. Okay, I recommend removing as much of the old caca as you possibly can, right? The better and cleaner the substrate that you can provide, the better the new product is going to perform and the better it's going to stick, right? That means your house will perform better. And you'll also keep bugs out. All right, making repairs right away. Stucco, although it's extremely durable, very rigid, we talked about it's going to be susceptible to cracks. All right, nothing gets better with time. It can only get worse. Ask your knees or your back. Now, I know that was a lot of concrete information. So I have one question left to ask you guys. Do you know what they call the place where concrete is buried? That's a cemetery. Oh no. All right, that's where we'll bury this presentation right here. Thank you all so much. Feel free to use me as a bad comedian example. That way I won't be totally useless, but I will stick around for questions if anybody has any. Again, to view a schedule and sign up for other CE classes we have, follow the link in the chat that I put there. If you ever have any questions about our services, booking an inspection or a class, maybe for your office, for your team, reach out and give Lucas a call. He will get it set up. Remember, we service the Austin, Houston, San Antonio, all those surrounding areas. And this was fantastic. Seriously, thank you very, very much. I really, really do appreciate you. Absolutely, you can share. If you put your email address in here in the chat, it makes it easier for me, so I don't have to go through the system to look it up, and that way I can copy and thank you. I can copy and paste it, and I'll send it to you. All right. Well, with that said, again, I appreciate you guys. Thank you all so much. Remember, be patient. It takes Trek a little while to apply your credits. Nothing I can do or we can do to make it any faster. Give them at least a week. If you haven't heard anything by then reach out and we'll take care of it for you. So thank you again, everybody. Really, really appreciate you. We'll see you on the next.